So James Charles is back, and honestly, I can't say I'm particularly happy about this. So he comes back in this gigantic Cosmopolitan article that I first saw posted on Twitter, and I knew that I just had to make a video about it. And it took me a while to make it because this is a very difficult topic to cover. So here's the article. Gigantic Cosmopolitan, huge, not exactly expose, because James Charles has all but admitted to most everything that he's been canceled over, but basically, it defies words. I'm having trouble. I can't even look at my notes and say anything comprehensible about this. So we're just going to read the headline. James Charles would like to be uncancelled, please. Not a great start. More than 2 years after allegations of sexual impropriety sent the superstar beauty YouTuber into influencer purgatory, he's hoping to relaunch himself and his brand with the help of a new makeup line. In wide-ranging interview with Cosmopolitan, Charles talks about fucking up and trying to move on. Now, there's a lot that needs to be said about this entire thing already, but the first thing we have to talk about is allegations of sexual impropriety, which is a wild way to say that he solicited and then exchanged nudes with someone who was underage. 2 people, at least, possibly more. There are unconfirmed reports of there being more. People who were 16 years old. He flirted with them, solicited nudes from them, and then sent nudes to them. That is not allegations of sexual impropriety. That is a crime. He committed a crime and exchanged sexual favors with a minor. And furthermore, it's not an allegation. He admitted it. It was confirmed to have actually gone on, which is why he was canceled on such a wide platform in the first place. Some people went so far as to call this grooming, and the only reason I have a hesitation with using that terminology is because grooming tends to imply that there's kind of a long-term play going on, where you start and then slowly build up over the course of time to sexual favors. But by not using the word grooming, I'm not excusing anything he's saying. It's the equivalent of calling like Grand Theft Auto insurance fraud. Like, by not calling an insurance fraud case Grand Theft Auto case, because obviously it's not, I'm not downplaying that insurance fraud happened. I'm just using a more correct terminology. There is an argument to be had that he did groom people, and that's very possible. But I think in the specific scenarios of what he was either admitted to doing or what was actually proven that he did, I don't think there was any long-term grooming going on. But that's very much just a technicality. Now, the second thing we have to talk about is it says that it sent the superstar beauty YouTuber into influencer purgatory. What does that mean? There was no influencer purgatory. Do you want some proof of this? Let's see. Here's his TikTok where, let's see how recently he posted this. Oh, look, an hour ago. He's not been in influencer purgatory. Look how long he's never went into influencer purgatory. And this is just his TikTok. His Instagram continues to be quite active as well. He posted a day ago. He posted a week ago. He posted 3 weeks ago. He posted 4 weeks ago. He has not been in any kind of influencer purgatory here. And even his YouTube channel, which for the longest time was his largest platform that he was on and essentially what blew him up in the first place, he has not been in influencer purgatory here either. Look at this. He's been posting, this is a few weeks ago to a few months ago to several months ago to just over a year ago. This happened in 2021, I believe, in February of 2021. And he took a short break of about 6 months, if memory serves. And look, an open conversation where he basically says he's back. And then despite the fact that he solicited nudes and then sent nudes to a minor, he just decided everything's A-okay. And I'm just going to come back and do years worth of content since then. There was no influencer purgatory, and a very vocal amount of people have been critical of him ever since. As well they should be, because this is a consistent pattern of things that he's doing. Now, before we get too lost in the sauce of this interview, let's do a quick review of all the things that have happened under James Charles. Now, when I first heard about James Charles's first controversies, which we'll get into, I was under the impression that he had been controversial for a while, but it seems like a lot of the early controversies that happened were just kind of a young guy being dumb. Like here, he made an Ebola joke, which was obviously in poor taste, but he apologized for it. He feuded with the people on it. He said Ariana Grande was rude. He got into a little beauty drama here. He released his own product line, which gave some people allergic reactions. Like, these are all very minor things. He edited his Instagram photos, but like, who doesn't? So the very first part of his kind of controversialness is kind of him just running his mouth on Twitter as a teenage male. So many people do that. So I'm not really sure where a large amount of the early hate came from. He just seemed like he got famous fast and he was a little bit douchey on Twitter. That was until May of 2017 when the huge Tati Westbrook Bye Sisters, Hi Sisters, Breaking My Silence drama all came out. Basically, Tati Westbrook publicly ended their friendship with James Charles in some huge 43-minute expose video where she basically said that she had a product line that James Charles had by word of mouth or by Instagram DMs agreed that they would promote. But then James Charles signed a contract with another rival brand in order to promote their stuff. And that was pretty much the entire thing. But she said that she felt betrayed by James Charles and he took back his word. And so she was absolutely done with everything having to do with him. And then as somehow happened, Jeffree Star just kind of came out of the woodworks and decided he wanted to be involved in this controversy, even though he is a horrible person and has no platform to stand on to criticize other people. But the interesting thing about the James Charles versus Tati Westbrook drama, we're ignoring Jeffree Star for now because I hate him, is that so much of what was said was actually not even true. As it turns out, a lot of the stuff that Tati Westbrook brought up in her video as stuff that she was upset about turned out to just not be the case. A lot of it was lies by Jeffree Star or some other YouTubers that I can't remember right now. And Tati Westbrook actually ended up walking this back and apologizing to James Charles because she misunderstood essentially the entire situation and caused him undue grief. However, this whole situation was absolutely huge. In fact, it was so huge, people started unsubscribing en masse in order to specifically watch James Charles's sub count go down. So you know how on YouTube channels, you can see sub count right here, but it's only 3 significant digits. Well, in the past, you could actually see the exact number of subscribers that someone had, but this situation right here is what changed all of that. There were literal live streams going on where people were watching James Charles's subscriber count go down. There were watch parties about this. They were watching James Charles's sub count go down and Tati Westbrook's sub count go up. And this is what happened that caused it to switch over to just getting 3 significant digits. For example, PewDiePie, you can only see 111 million because that's what they were doing. So they switched the entire YouTube system and how the API works and all of that, so that nobody could have these unsubscribed watch parties like they did in the past. But aside from that, there wasn't much else that James Charles was really on the hook for. He had James Charles's over party trended when there was like something where he might have said the N-word on his Instagram story, which I don't believe is the case. He might have said it at some point, but he certainly wouldn't post him saying it on his own Instagram story. It's wild to think that he would do that, so I don't think that's the case. There was some issues here where he went to a party during the pandemic and then he was criticized because he said he didn't like someone's fashion and yada yada. There was a color block thing with Ethan Klein, but there wasn't a whole lot of other stuff going on. Like, he once again was just kind of running his mouth and making dumb mistakes until we reach the big drama, and that's what this Cosmo article is talking about when it was this, that he wants to be uncancelled, because this drama, not even drama, this story is what really catapulted him into the hated YouTuber stratosphere. In March 2021, other minors accused James Charles of flirting and sexting with them. The YouTuber addressed these allegations in a YouTube video, and essentially this is what did it. The Tati Westbrook situation was by and large cleared up. The other stuff was mostly him running his mouth on Twitter, and it was annoying, but by and large he apologized for it, and there wasn't any kind of long-term reparations or damage that was caused. But this right here, and we're going to watch some of his apology of this, this is what really solidified his career as going downhill. So basically what happened is that James Charles would talk to people that slid into his DMs, and in several of these situations, possibly as many as 15, but 2 for sure confirmed situations, people that he talked to and he flirted with and then exchanged nudes with turned out to be underage. And that's pretty much the entirety of the situation, not to downplay its significance, but that is what happened. He talked to people, he flirted with people, and then he exchanged nudes with people that were underage, and he should be criticized every bit as much as he is for it. After all of this came out and it was confirmed that that happened, and some clips went viral, I believe on TikTok, of people saying, oh look, I talked with James Charles and this is the kind of things that he asked me to do and the things that he said to me and the pictures that he sent me. After those blew up on TikTok, James Charles put out an apology video in which he calls it holding myself accountable and then proceeds to not at all hold himself accountable. So we're going to watch clips of this and talk about each section of the apology insofar as it matters to this Cosmo article.
Doing that, I want to make it really, really clear that I fully understand my actions and how they are wrong. There's no excuse for them, and I don't plan on making any in this video either, and I hope that you will choose to watch it all the way through.
See, the interesting thing about that is that he says he knows they were wrong, which is a wild way of putting the fact that you solicited nudes from a minor as I know what I did was wrong. No, forgetting to pick up your cousin from school is wrong because that's dumb. The soliciting nudes from a minor is horrendous and a crime and needs to be called out as heinous as it is. But he says that he's not going to make any kind of excuses. And then he spends the next, 12 and a half minutes of this video making excuses. And we'll see some more of the stuff that he says here.
I realized that the receipts and the screenshots and the specific details of the interaction really don't matter because I fucked up. And I needed to take accountability for my actions and, most importantly, apologize to the people that were affected by them.
Yes, I mean, that is all true. He did fuck up. He does need to take accountability for his actions. He needs to lose his platform on the internet because clearly he cannot be trusted with it. And he needs to go to jail. There's laws and processes and judges and courts just for this kind of thing. So he says that he's going to hold himself accountable, according to the title of the video. And then he just kind of doesn't. He says that he's not going to make any kind of excuses, but we still have 10 more minutes. If you're not going to make excuses for what you did, why is there 10 more minutes in the video? And I will tell you why. It is because just literally 53 seconds later, he says this.
I was being reckless, and after looking back and
I'm so sorry. I watch everything on double speed, specifically this one, because I cannot stand James Charles for a second longer than I have to.
I'm sorry that I added you. I'm sorry that I flirted with you, and I'm really sorry.
He's talking to the victims here.
If I ever made you uncomfortable. It is completely unacceptable.
Yes, it is.
I was being reckless, and after looking back and finally...
This is the best part. Pay attention here.
Realizing that this was my own fault.
Yeah, it is.
I started doing a lot of thinking and reflecting to really try and figure out why I was actually allowing myself to be so reckless in the first place.
So this is obviously the most important part of the video is why he, James Charles, got put himself in a position, where he solicited nudes from minors, which I would say is definitely the most important part of this video.
In all other areas of my life, my friends, my business, I like to think of myself as pretty put together and on top of things, and I couldn't understand why relationships were the one outlier. Why were they not working? Why was this area of me so different? And I finally came to a conclusion. It sucks and it is ridiculously embarrassing to admit this, but I think I have to, and that is that I'm desperate.
Well, pack it up and go home, boys. We solved the mystery. See, I thought it was a weird, creepy, potentially pedophilic thing where he was soliciting, a power dynamic thing where he was soliciting nudes from minors. But thankfully, our good, normal, angelic James Charles here, he was only desperate. So the cops can go home, the FBI can leave my house. It's just desperation, ladies and gentlemen. Now I don't need to be the one to tell you what a pathetic excuse this is. I was desperate. Why is this about you? This doesn't get to be about you, James. This gets to be about the victims who you victimized and used your platform in order to solicit nudes from them. This is not you talking about why you fucked up in the way that you did. This is not your story that's getting to be told. Now, a lot of people actually ended up defending this. Not the majority of people, but a good chunk of people ended up defending it, saying, well, there's not reasonable that he would have known that these were minors. They said they were 18 when they were only 16, ergo it's okay. But that's such a horrible excuse. If I go to another country and I break one of their laws that I didn't know about, I still get punished. And most people would say that's reasonable. I don't get to get away with something just because I didn't know. In no legal system is that allowed. Ignorance is no excuse for law. And so to decide that here, suddenly, in an instance of soliciting nudes from minors, it's somehow okay for that to be the new standard, obviously not. That's so messed up, especially when you're in a position of power like James Charles is. At the time, he had like 26 million subscribers. He was more famous, arguably, than he is now. It is his and any other celebrity's responsibility to go out of their way in order to verify these kinds of things, because otherwise they are directly using their platforms in order to take advantage of people. Now, before I go off on an absolutely insane rant or tangent about that, let's go back to the article, because there's some very interesting points that I feel like I need to bring up about the entire thing. The first section we have to read here is talking about the whole situation. In February of 2021, at the age of 21, James confronted a career crisis he couldn't quickly apologize for or capitalize on. And basically it's phrasing it like this because previously here it talks about his other more minor controversies, which in the grand scheme of things are not that important. He was publicly accused of sending lewd photos and inappropriate sexual messages to a 16-year-old fan. James says he was misled into believing the boy was 18 years old and that he blocked him as soon as he learned the truth. I've never been more disgusted in my life than when I found out the kid was 16, James Charles said. I was mortified, absolutely mortified. The fan did not return Cosmopolitan's request for comment. Two things to note there. One, he just kind of admits it. He admits that why is this man not in jail? And the second thing is the fan did not return Cosmopolitan's request for comment. Leave him alone. Like this is, there's no way that fan did not receive hate for months, possibly years about this situation. Leave him out of this. Let him move on with his life. Stop trying to contact victims for your publication. And the next part of the article I thought was kind of interesting because there were a lot of people that came out claiming to have had inappropriate messages with James Charles. And as with any situation, when there are some people that are actually telling the truth about the things that happened to them and the way that they were taken advantage of, there are a bunch of people that are con artists and they jump aboard this train to try and gain clout. And so interestingly enough, this was mentioned and I felt it was worth mentioning just so you know that not everything that was said is true. In fact, a lot of the claims against James Charles were unsubstantiated, but I feel like it's very important to know that if even just one is true, that is obviously one too many and he should be punished to the full extent of the law for that one. However, we are going to read this part. Cosmopolitan reached out to multiple people who said they were minors at the time of their changes with James Charles. One asked if we would be willing to pay and did not reply when we said our publication does not compensate sources for interviews. But another former accuser wrote back via Instagram DM with a new revelation. He said he had already privately apologized to Charles a few months ago, telling him I was 18 and the TikTok situation I made and blew the situation up. When asked to elaborate, the person did not reply. Charles's team said someone did message Charles this spring, admitting he lied about his age. Again, two things to mention. One, obviously, this first person was just in it for the clout and the money. Whether or not it actually happened to them, if it was true, probably not with that person. The second thing was this fan privately messaged James Charles to apologize, and obviously they put that in there to kind of make it seem like it was the fan's fault. But it's not. James Charles is the one with the power and the age and the authority in this situation. You don't put this part in the article to making it seem like, oh, the fan was the one who messed up because he lied about his age. No, James Charles was the one who messed up, point blank. There is nothing else after that, end of story. And this interview actually arguably gets worse. In this part, James Charles talking, he says, oh, I absolutely did fuck up, but he denies that he ever engaged in grooming, a practice defined by anti-sex violation organization RAIN as manipulative behaviors that an abuser uses to gain access to potential victim, coerce them to agree to the abuse, and reduce the risk of being caught. Charles continues, I feel like that word is a very popular buzzword right now, especially in politics and stuff, but the actual meaning of it has been so misconstrued. Referring to the first allegation against him, he adds, the conversation lasted 1 hour. I don't know this person. I never met this person. Nothing happened between me and this actual person. So to use that word categorically is incorrect. Okay, James, nothing happened between me and this actual... Yes, it did. You flirted with him while he was 16, sent him nudes while he was 16, and then got him to send you nudes while he was 16. Do not say nothing happened. Something did happen. A crime happened. But this is not even the worst part of the article. We have to talk, and this is going to be a lot of reading, and I'm sorry, but trust me, bear with me, it is all worth it. Romantic relationships would become a whole nother challenge, talking about how difficult it was for James Charles blowing up so suddenly and becoming famous so young. Ultimately led to the incidents, he says. Finding dating prospects in the rarefied influencer strata he eventually vaulted into was tough. Quickly, please name 5 male gay couples, celebrities from the ages of 20 to 25. He says you can't because they don't exist. Right off the bat, this is a terrible straw man argument. You can't name them because they don't exist. I can't name 5 20 to 25 year old couples in general, first of all, let alone celebrity couples. I don't know any. To say that to use that kind of comparison, that's so ingenuous to his argument. You know, name 5 brands of car, or name 5 styles of car that Ferrari makes. Like, I don't know. You can't make that comparison by saying you can't name this, therefore this must not exist. I mean, this is just wild. So the internet, once again, he says, became an avenue for exploration. He started using TikTok's For You and Instagram's Explore pages as dating apps, as many people his age do, but admittedly ignoring the pitfalls. As many people his age do, they do not. Ask any one of your girlfriends, not girlfriends, but like friends who are girls, if they have happily received men sliding into their DMs from their TikTok or Instagram pages. Not a single one of them is happy about it. People my age do not use TikTok and Instagram DMs or explore pages or the comment sections as dating apps. It is weird, it is creepy, and it should not ever be done by anyone that is on planet Earth. And to say as many people his age do, it's trying to justify like, oh, this is a totally normal thing of coming across a stranger you think is hot somewhere on the internet and then trying to have sex with them. Like, no, that is weird. We do not do that. We do not endorse doing that. And everyone my age, if they are in their right mind, should look at that and say, that is horrible. And also, you're trying to make excuses for the things you did. Stop doing that. But the article gets even worse. His biggest mistakes, he now thinks, were making himself too available and reckless, hitting on anyone he thought might show him interest, which is such a weird way of saying that, because I would say his biggest mistake was soliciting nudes from minors. Why are we not talking about that? How do we keep getting off topic from this? No, your biggest mistake, not a lot of people use TikTok's For You page as a dating app. That's a terrible idea. No, your biggest mistake was not being desperate and reckless. Lots of people are desperate and reckless, and also lots of people have not committed sex crimes against minors. His intention was never to prey on minors, he said. I didn't mean to prey on minors. What does that even mean? He tries to explain that in all this holding myself accountable, but it didn't just come across right, he reflects. I've been fucked over by so many men so many different times. At this point, I just want a fucking boyfriend, someone who's going to love me, that's going to care for me. So a lot of times I just got into talking to somebody with rose-colored glasses. You don't get to play the victim card, James. You don't get to say that your intention was to never prey on minors, because it doesn't matter what your intention was. Every drunk driver ever never had an intention of crashing their car and killing their friends or hitting a stranger on the sidewalk. It doesn't matter what your intentions are if you break the law and hurt people. And that's exactly what you've done. And to then, right after that, right after admitting that you preyed on minors, to then try and make yourself appear the victim because you've been fucked over by so many men so many different times is an insane argument. If I get high, drive my car and kill someone and then say that, oh, well, I've been, fucked over so many times by people that have been mean to me, that has no bearing on anything. There's no correlation or argument to be made there. Just because you have had bad experiences, which we all have, by the way, does not mean you get to, and I cannot emphasize this enough, solicit nudes from minors. That is what you did. So now the question you're probably asking is, okay, why is he on apps like TikTok and Instagram's For You page looking for dates when there are apps specifically for dates, Hinge, Bumble, Tinder, Grindr, et cetera, et cetera. And then the interview says that. I still have to ask, though, why didn't he just stick to actual adult dating apps? Outstanding question. He tells me he's previously had accounts on Raya, which is like Tinder for celebrities. You have to be accepted specifically by them. Anyone famous is on Raya. Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble. And while he did go on dates with people he met there, he ultimately felt too exposed. Like anyone he swiped right on was going to take screenshots of their conversations or brag to their friends about it. He doesn't fully address that anyone on any social media platform could do the same. Thank you, interviewer, for pointing this out. He felt too exposed, thinking that people would take screenshots of it. That happened anyway, James. That's how we got into this whole mess in the first place, is because you were on a non-dating app trying to flirt with people and trying to solicit news from minors, and then you got screenshotted and it went viral on TikTok. At least if it was on a dating app, you would, one, have a reasonable way to have verified age, because you have to be a certain age to be on those apps, and two, people take screenshots, but they're going to do that anyway. At least if they're taking screenshots of you being flirty on a dating app, people have the understanding that that's kind of what dating apps are for. People get flirty on dating apps because dating apps are for the purpose of dating, which is to some extent flirtatious by nature. And I was like, essentially that's the end of the good parts of the article. It just goes on and saying how he's trying to make a comeback and yada, yada, yada. And I don't really care that much anymore. There's one more section actually that I forgot about that we should talk about. He says he's more cautious now. Wow, imagine that. Although not so much that he's given up on the DM sliding completely. That sentence hurts. We will come back to it. Instead, he started requiring potential romantic interest to provide IDs before he'll engage. I'm a club bouncer at this point, he says, which even still hasn't stopped the occasional breach of trust. Earlier this year, a TikTok user shared snippets of flirtatious conversations he had with James, in which Charles outlines his requirements for a boyfriend. Charles also said that he recently caught a 17-year-old trying to lie about his age by taking a digit out of his ID. I'm a club bouncer at this point. He's trying to get sympathy points for not soliciting nudes from minors. Like, this is insane. This is delusional. You don't get to get sympathy points because you are now taking appropriate and reasonable steps to not take advantage of minors. And it's also wild to me that he says, although not much, that he's more cautious, although not so much so that he's given up the DM sliding completely. And that's one of the big final takeaway points that we have to discuss for this video. James Charles has learned nothing. The things that got him into trouble in the first place were the desperation and the sliding into DMs and flirting with anybody that would flirt with him. And here what we're seeing is that even though he's more cautious, he's still having instances of being so desperate that he flirted apparently with a 17, or he didn't flirt with a 17-year-old. He almost flirted with a 17-year-old. He flirted with some other people on TikTok that I assume were of age. We're just going to give him the benefit of that one benefit of the doubt. It's the only one you will ever get from me, James. He says he's a club bouncer, but he's still desperate and he's still sliding into DMs. And that's what makes this whole comeback thing so pathetic, is James Charles has not made any kind of a change or even an attempt to change. See, DM sliding in a vacuum, it can be fine. I don't condone it, but I can see instances where it can be done respectfully and appropriately without anybody getting uncomfortable or hurt or anything like that. But when you fuck up so badly that you exchange nudes with a minor, you no longer get the privilege of DM sliding. It is time to stop. It's just like in the same way that alcohol is fine. There's nothing inherently in a vacuum wrong with alcohol. But if you're an alcoholic, then you need to avoid bars at all costs, or avoid going to parties with your friends that drink a lot. If it's something that has caused you pain and damage in the past, and it will continue to do so in the future, then it is your responsibility to avoid any situation in which that might happen again. It's the same with gambling. In a vacuum, there's nothing wrong with gambling. You can spend $1,000 going on a trip to the Grand Canyon and you have a good time. Or you can spend $1,000 in Vegas gambling. You have a good time. They accomplish the same thing. But if you're addicted to gambling, then you need to avoid any situation and instance in which gambling is available, because that is now your responsibility to look after yourself and those that you are responsible for or need to take care of, like family or children or pets or anything like that. So to have not learned anything out of all of this and expect to be welcomed back with open arms after spending 2 years since it's happened not apologizing and continuing to go about as if all things are normal, and then to come back with a makeup line that you're using this Cosmopolitan article to promote is frankly disgusting. And that's why I titled this video James Charles' Pathetic Comeback. This is him trying to come back, and in every sense of the word, it is pathetic. Thanks for watching.